What's up? My name is Austin Black and I'm back with another video. Finally, 2019 in general has been so busy, just working and grinding, growing our business, Ocular Pop. But we have grown a lot and we've added a lot of gear, a lot of different workflows, a lot of really cool things to our repertoire. So this is part 2 of a few videos I'm making about gear. The first one I did about my audio gear, and this one is about filters, which I'm really excited to make a video about because I have been through a lot of different filters. So I think like a lot of different filmmakers, the first filter that really caught my eye that I wanted to use was a variable ND filter. I got a Tiffin variable ND filter, and I was just never quite satisfied with that setup. I didn't quite understand filter threads and all that kind of stuff. I also didn't really understand exactly how a variable ND filter worked and what those downsides would be, such as the cross effect that comes in the middle of the filter and some of the color effects that come with variable NDs. I kind of thought because the Tiffin filter was a little bit on the lower end in terms of how expensive it was, maybe I just needed to get a more expensive ND. So I upgraded to the SLR Magic 82mm variable ND. This one had the same issues. I just really wasn't vibing with the variable ND. So I think I've come up with a filter system that really pairs ND filters with some really cool effects filters, and let me show you what I've got. So kind of my philosophy with the filters is I've got 2 types of lenses. I have Sigma Art Primes, and these are usually f1.4 or f1.8 in the case of the 135. And for these I use circular filters. I find that to be the easiest because I'm really usually running and gunning with these. And then I've got the 2 Tamron zooms, which are both f2.8. So they kind of match, and for these I like to use 4x4 filters. I like this filter system because it works well on the Tamron 17-28 because it's such a wide angle, so you don't get as much vignetting. I really like this system. Let me show you the specific filters. So I've talked about it before, but with all my circular filters I use the Zoom magnetic adapter that just makes it so easy to attach the filters to this lens. I can quickly pop it on the lens and do what I need to do, throw it in my pocket, all that good stuff. And the other cool thing is these Sigma lenses, aside from the 85 and 135, use a 77mm filter thread. Those ones that have larger filter threads, I just adapt them to 77. So my Zoom magnetic adapter is a 77mm. The Polar Pro ND filters that I use are also 77mm, so it's just a really good cohesive fit all around. So here is the first ND filter, and this is probably the one I use the most. This is the Polar Pro ND 64PL, and so this kind of comes into play with the Sigma lenses. So the ND 64 is a pretty heavy ND. Good for long exposures and good for getting really shallow depth of field in daylight. The way I look at this is the filter I want to use if I'm shooting at f2 or lower. So it works perfectly with these lenses at f1.4 in daylight. So really like the cohesiveness of that. So I also have these 2 Polar Pro circular filters. This is just the regular ND64 not polarized, and this is just the circular polarizer, so I can just use these 2 effects separately. I can also stack them on top of each other, so basically I can mimic the same effect, or I can separate them and use it on a second camera, which is really useful. Overall, making the switch to these Polar Pro NDs really added a lot of quality and a lot of production value over even what I was doing when I was using the variable ND filters, because it just is a much better workflow and your image has much more clarity, much less color fringing. It also cuts out more stops of light than most variable ND filters, so it really allows me to open up my aperture in good light to f1.8, f1.4 and get super smooth, shallow depth of field stuff, which is just great, and it's really improved my production value overall. The final circular filter I have is a 1/4 stop black Pro Mist. I use these quite a bit. It just softens the image, makes it look a little bit more organic, a little bit less digital, a little bit more like an image you'd get from film. These are really great. I would maybe consider going to 1/8 of a stop because this one is pretty strong. The effect is very noticeable on your lens. But I really like that stylized look, and I think it looks great if you use it sparingly and you use it in the right circumstances. Okay, so getting into my second set of filters, this is all by Tiffin. So I have this filter holder, which is nice that you can rotate it around. It's very quick to take off of the lens if you need to do that. And again, it also works on a 77mm filter. So if I did need to put this on my Sigma, I could quickly do that. Just take off the magnetic adapter, screw on this adapter, put it on. So I just really feel like I've got a cohesive setup all built around this 77mm filter thread with my step up rings and step down rings. All right, let's look at some of these filters that we have. So first of all, we've got another black pearl mist, 1/4. This is the 4x4 version. So really the same concept. Here, I can actually show you in this shot what it does. So you'll probably notice it's a little bit more diffused looking. I really like this look, especially for videos like this. I think it really just adds a little extra layer and just makes them look really, really nice. Okay, moving on now. Let's look at our other filters. Okay, so here is a Tiffin Gradient ND filter. This is when you've got a bright sky, maybe over a darker building or a darker subject, and you want to raise up your exposure a little bit. You can do some of this in post with masking and stuff like that, but if your camera doesn't have great dynamic range, you know, the Sony a7 III isn't going to blow you away with its dynamic range when you compare it to a Blackmagic Pocket 6K or something like that. So something like this can be very, very useful for time lapse and for other things. And what's cool is with this system, you can stack these filters. So I can stack this with an ND to really open up that shutter if I'm doing a time lapse or something like that. So I really, really think this is super useful. Here is my Tiffin ND. So this is a 1.2, which I believe is a 4-stop ND. So this is just, I've kind of measured it out, and this is what works best with my f2.8 lenses, whereas the circular ones work best with my 1.4 and 1.8 lenses. Same basic concept, you know, you just want that, that nice motion blur in daylight, and you want to be able to shoot wide open or at f4 or whatever. So super useful, super great. I will say there's one drawback is my copy of this has a pretty significant green shift. So what I have to do is kind of go into the white balance on my camera and correct that and kind of compensate towards the magenta side. Okay, and then the last two filters I have are these fun little effect filters. One of them is a sunset, one of them is a twilight. Basically, it can just enhance the look of golden hour. If maybe you don't have a great golden hour, you don't have a great blue hour, these can kind of enhance the look a little bit. I don't use these all that much, but they can really give an enhanced effect in the right circumstances, so I like having them in my arsenal. In case it's something that I think needs a little bit of extra oomph, it really does look better when you do these kinds of things in camera as opposed to doing them in post, especially when you talk about filmmaking. I think with photography, you really don't need stuff like this. You can manipulate the image as much as you want in photography, really, but video, I think these are really fun and pretty useful. So overall, I'm really pleased with this setup I put together. I've tried a lot of different options for filters, and this has just been what is the most cohesive and what makes me the happiest when I'm shooting, when I'm on set. So these are my filters. Let me know what filters you have, what setups you have, or if you have any beef with mine, if you think that I could have done better, let me know. Let me know in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one.